With their star players seemingly wanting to get out of town, Mark Scheifele, Connor Hellebuyck, Blake Wheeler, Pierre-Luc Dubois, what do the Winnipeg Jets do this offseason? What trades do they make? What can they get in return? And who do they approach in free agency? The NHL offseason continues here on the Edgework channel, and today we're looking at the Winnipeg Jets. So, of course, I brought alongside with me Kevin Cheveldayoff, also known as Alex Moretto, to help us walk through what the Winnipeg Jets should be doing this offseason, some potential signings, restricted free agents they should be trying to bring back, as well as some potential trades that they could be looking to make. As everyone knows at this point in time, the Winnipeg Jets are what you would call a little bit of a disaster at the current moment in time. Couple expiring contracts, you're stripping away C's, you got guys who say they don't want to come back. So what do the Winnipeg Jets do? We'll break it all down here in this video today, but before we get into that, you're going to notice here on the screen the Pinnacle Sportsbook logo as well as a QR code beside it, and that is because we are proud to work with the Pinnacle Sportsbook, because Pinnacle is the world's sharpest sportsbook and available to bettors in Ontario. You can find out what professional bettors have known for decades. Pinnacle is where the best bettors bet. You must be 19 plus in Ontario to play. Please play responsibly. Not available in the US. If you do want to sign up for Pinnacle, you can scan that QR code there on the screen, as well as hit the link in the description. It does help support the show. But Mr. Cheveldayoff, let's get into some off-season action here, what we're going to be looking at going into next season. But before we do, what do you make of what happened with the Winnipeg Jets in this previous season? You go into the playoffs there, you face off against the Vegas Golden Knights. Eventually, they obviously go on to win the Stanley Cup. But after Game 1, the Jets pretty much deflated. You got the coach calling guys out in the media after. You got the players on the team aren't happy with it. You got guys looking to move on. What do you make of this disaster of a season that happened for the Winnipeg Jets last year?
Yeah, I mean, kind of all over the place with how well they started, and then, obviously tail off significantly towards the end up still making the playoffs. Handled the Cup champion Vegas Golden Knights in Game 1. Looked like maybe we're going to pull it upset in this series. They have the lead in Game 2. Things kind of go south for them. Game 3, they lose that tough double overtime game that Morrissey left early on. I think it was a gutsy effort to get that to double overtime to short their best defenseman. And then, obviously things just went south completely after that. But injuries definitely played a part too, right? Ehlers only plays one playoff game. They lose Morrissey at the very start of Game 3. Kind of tough. Scheifele, Scheifele only played 4 of the 5. Now you enter a very interesting offseason where there could be a mass exodus, and depending on how you look at it, that's either a scary thing for Jets fans, or it's a very exciting thing where, hey, we're going to turn the page here, and we've been sort of potentially underachieving, I guess, for a while. You have guys like Scheifele and Wheeler and Hellebuyck and Dubois and whatever, and just haven't been able to take that next step. So maybe this is a good thing, a chance to sort of not even rebuild, but just start fresh. And I think that opens a lot of exciting possibilities for Cheveldayoff. And I think this could be, they're the team to watch this offseason.
Yeah, they are. I mean, you've got some big names, some big players who are on some expiring deals, some guys who clearly do not want to be there, not looking to be there in the future moving forward. But one thing that is reality of the situation, this isn't to give a jab at Jets fans or anything at all, but one of the things that they have some slight difficulty with building out some of these teams or making some of these moves is a lot of guys with modified no trade clauses or full no move clauses or whatever. The first place that they're likely not trying to go to in the majority of cases is the Winnipeg Jets, and it is the truth of what happens when you find out about some of these guys' lists. They don't want to go there. That's not where they'd like to be moved. So you have to give them a convincing argument of why they should be coming to Winnipeg if you are looking to trade for them. So that also just becomes a step in the way, and then signing free agents can be a little bit difficult. But when you have players like you've got here who can bring back some assets, that is going to be a little bit of a chip in your corner to be able to bring back a little bit more value in that sense. But as we look to build out this team for next year, We're going to be doing so here on the cap-friendly GM, interactive GM. So if you people are looking at home wondering how we're doing this, that is how. I'll include the link in the description below. But most importantly here, let's start with the restricted free agents that we are looking to bring back for the Winnipeg Jets. We'll go right away there. Who are guys on this team from last year that you feel you should be prioritizing bringing back who are restricted?
Definitely going to be... bringing back Morgan Barron here. I think you're going to look to re-sign all your RFAs if you're the Jets. Logan Stanley, a good depth defenseman, maybe even like your seventh guy heading into next season. You're probably going to bring back Sandberg as well. Morgan Barron for sure, and Kevin Stenlund. Obviously, Pierre-Luc Dubois being an RFA is not someone who's made it very clear he's not looking to re-sign even for 1 year.
Yeah.
So let's start with Morgan Barron, I guess, and we will give him a 2-year deal at a little over $1 million. Let's say like 1.15 or something like that.
Okay, so we'll lock in Morgan Barron there. First signing, first restricted free agent, and now it gets added to our list, and we'll continue to go back. Next RFA that we're going to look to sign for the Jets here.
The next one we will look to re-sign is Kevin Stenlund, I guess. I don't think necessarily he will factor in on this team, at least on my plan, the way I've kind of mapped this out here. But,
right.
He's someone you'll have as a depth forward, if injuries hit and stuff. So, we'll bring him back basically around another 1-year deal around the same average is good.
All right. So first two RFAs taken down. Get them locked into contracts. Moving forward, and you mentioned Logan Stanley. We'll go to him next here. What is the cap hit term that you're looking at bringing Logan Stanley back on?
Let's bring Stanley back. He's 25 here, so either way you're going to move him into UFA. So we can bring him back. I don't think you're looking for anything long term. So let's go 1 or 2 years here at 1.25.
Keeping within this roster, is there anyone else that you'd want to bring back to play up on the big club next year? The guys that are important from there, obviously. So there's going to be some guys here who might play in the minors next season, but we're not going to focus on that for the sake of this.
No, let's leave it here. Let's leave it there.
Okay.
Start getting into the real fun stuff.
So now, where is the next place that you want to go here? You want to go sign free agents, or do you want to start making some trades? Because there are a bunch of guys that we talked about who could be interesting pieces to move around.
Yeah, look, there's about 4 elephants in the room, and I think we need to get to each of them one by one here. So we can start with Pierre-Luc Dubois. Obviously, in our Habs offseason plan, we traded him to Montreal, but that's not necessarily doesn't mean that's best case scenario for the Jets. I think there are other teams where they can get a sort of better return or a return that makes a bit more sense for them. So in this case, I'm going to trade Pierre-Luc Dubois in a sort of sign and trade to the LA Kings.
Right.
Dennis Bernstein, friend of the show, has reported in the past that the Kings have been very aggressive going after Dubois when he was available. So it makes sense that they would potentially be going after him again. And I think there's definitely some a deal there that we can make work. I am going to look for a guy who can contribute right away and a guy who I think would be available in a deal like this, which is Alex Scheifele. And then if we continue to build out this package, let's add in Sean Durzi on the back end. A good young guy will be under team control for a while. And then I think that you can squeeze a little bit more out of them here, even though maybe you don't have the most leverage in the world, but looking for maybe sort of a depth forward, a guy who, again, under team control, I look for someone like an RFA here and Jarrett Anderson-Dolan, maybe someone who's not going to factor in heavily into the future plans for the Kings, but still a nice player. I think if you can, get him to sort of round out the package, that would be a decent, I think you do well in that Dubois trade there for a package of Scheifele, Durzi, and Anderson-Dolan.
Anything else we're adding to this trade before we submit it through to the NHL office?
Nope, let's do it. Call Gary.
All right. Make the call. Gary, approve the roster. There you go. So we bring back Scheifele, Anderson Dolan, as well as Sean Dursey, sending Pierre-Luc Dubois the other way. And you mentioned this would likely be in a sign and trade type of situation. So there you go, Pierre-Luc Dubois moving on the other way to the LA Kings. Now, we're going to have to sign Anderson Dolan here, but is there any other big trades that you'd be looking to move on for? Is there some guys that you want to sign before you make those trades? What is your next step as the GM of the Winnipeg Jets?
Yeah, so I mean, okay, so you got the rights to Anderson Dolan, so we can give him like 2 years, like $850, something like that. I think would make sense. But now, okay, so that's one elephant. Let's get to the next one. Mark Scheifele, obviously, just a very good player, good scorer, big guy, center. I mean, look, it's say what you want about Scheifele, and like there's people who like to criticize him, and maybe some of it's warranted, but nonetheless, he's going to be someone who's highly coveted and someone who might do very well with the change of scenery here. And I think you can get a decent return for him. Let's move him to Carolina. I think that makes a lot of sense for Carolina and what they're kind of looking to do. They need a guy who is going to put the puck in the back of the net. Right now, kind of relying on Kotkaniemi as their second center. I don't quite think that cuts it. And, I mean, if you can bring in a guy like Scheifele, a veteran guy, popped him over 40 goals last year, I think that would make a lot of sense for them. And they have pieces that they can give back to the Jets here that would appeal to them. So
for sure,
let's say you're giving Scheifele to Carolina and you're going to get back as the centerpiece of the deal, Martin Necas.
Okay.
Here's a guy who can play center, hasn't a ton there, but I think now, like, bringing him in, if you're trading Dubois, you're trading Scheifele, you're going to give him a real shot at center next season. So let's say Necas, and honestly, like, you could convince me that this could be a 1-for-1 deal just based on the fact that Scheifele has to move on. They're going to get something for him while they can. Necas coming off a very good season, obviously maybe a bit more of a disappointing playoffs, but like a guy who is under team control here, like he's an RFA after this, the Jets aren't just going to lose him for nothing. So, but I mean, maybe like, does Carolina add like a pick or something like that, or a depth prospect? Sure. We can add like a fourth or something, but for the sake of like building out this roster for next season, I think this is basically what your trade is going to look like.
All right, so we'll throw in the fourth there just to kind of beef that up, going back the other way to acquire Mark Scheifele. And this trade, obviously, here in Winnipeg does drop down $3 million of salary, so they open some of that back up, but we'll send this on through to the NHL offices, and oh, look at that, it is approved. So now you're currently sitting at $6.867 million of cap space available for this Jets team. You've moved on from Mark Scheifele. You moved on from Pierre-Luc Dubois. Those are two of the biggest pieces there. What's the next domino to fall?
Blake Wheeler. It's been reported that he is not going to be with the team next season. I think everyone would be pretty shocked if he was. Also a guy that's going to be very hard to move, though. Like, just that's a monster salary, even if you eat half of it. Yeah. Like, I don't think the Jets are really dying to do that. So we instead are going to, and obviously, with the no trade clause, the modified no trade clause, it's going to be tough to find a right suitor. You can't just necessarily ship him off to an Arizona. Is he going to want to waive his no trade clause to go there? What? Like, maybe he will, but for the sake of this exercise, we are just going to buy him out.
Those are three of the big four. One remaining, and I think this one might be the biggest piece of all, just from the sake of who he is. Connor Hellebuyck, kind of sitting there still. Vezina caliber goaltender, can drastically change the way a team looks, the way a team plays, what kind of success they might have. How do you handle Connor Hellebuyck going into next season?
Yeah, this is a really tough one, and I kind of muddled over this. There are a lot of potential landing spots for him. I mean, a team like Jersey makes a lot of sense. A team that has the cap space, they have the pieces that they could trade, but that's not where I settled here. I settled on Buffalo. I think that, it's a bit of an aggressive move, but the Sabres, it's something that can suit them obviously very well. A team that is almost ready to contend right now. They have the question mark at goalie. They do have a long-term solution, but that solution in Devin Levi is not necessarily ready to start this year. Probably not for a little bit longer. So bringing in a guy like Hellebuyck where you can have him for, a few years, if not longer, to bridge the gap. I think that's something that they could look to do and, again, contend right now. So let us ship Hellebuyck to Buffalo. And in the return package, I'm going to go with Victor Olofsson, who is a guy who is, obviously heavily rumored to be on the move. It sounds like he's going to be traded this offseason. And again, if you're Winnipeg, like, you're looking at him as a guy who's going to help you right now. Like, you're not necessarily making your team that much worse by moving on from these core four guys. You're still keeping yourself in a position with Ehlers, with Connor, and like bringing in these faces who can contribute right now. You're still going to be competitive next season. So Olofsson as one of the guys in that deal. And let's add in John Jason Peterka as well, who I think is a nice young player. Again, going to be in the lineup this season, contribute right away, under team control. That would be a very attractive piece to bring back if you're Winnipeg. And let's throw in a second-round pick as well. Maybe you can pry Philly's pick, the higher one, away from them.
Any other picks that we're adding there into this deal?
I mean, if you can, you're going to try and get as much as you can, but I think that's pretty much I think that's a pretty fair deal here.
Right. Okay, so before we hit submit, I have questions for you about this one. The first one being, I feel like there might be some reluctance from Buffalo to move on from a guy like JJ Peterka. It's not necessarily to say that they won't, or that you as Kevin Cheveldayoff might have the answers for that. But just in this situation, that's one that I look at and say, hey, this Peterka kid, I think he's pretty good. I think that you kind of have that reliance on, like, all right, can you build up some of your young guys to be part of the bigger core going forward? Like, you bring back Opozo. Yeah, that's great, but you bring him back on one-year deals now. He's not going to be the long-term here in Buffalo, so maybe it's some of these other guys. Maybe it's him. Olofsson, I agree with going out the other way. But the only question that I kind of had for you is, does bringing in Hellebuyck stunt the growth of Devon Levi a little too much? And what I mean by that, when I say that, is that Connor Hellebuyck is a goaltender who is capable of and seems to enjoy playing 60 to 70 games a season. Mm-hmm. You see him slot in at like mid to high 60s each year of the last couple of seasons. I think that's part of the thing that just kind of gets him rolling. We don't really see him fall off too much in the playoffs. I think it's more a result of the team in front of him than it is him, like his actual play itself, that kind of has that deterioration. So if he's going to be eating up that many minutes, if he's playing that many games, you're going to kind of chop down Levi of what he could potentially play in another situation with another goalie. If you're in Buffalo, does that concern you at all? Is that maybe a hesitancy to say, like, hey, maybe Hellebuyck's not the move that we make, we go find another guy?
So, I mean, yeah, it's very possible. I think that Levi is still probably a few years away from being the guy that you want to go into your season with as the undisputed number one starter. So, like,
yes,
whether Hellebuyck is a guy who you're bringing in for this year and then maybe you bring him back after this year for like on a 2-year deal or something like that. Like, I think something like that could still make sense for them. Obviously, it's not necessarily a perfect fit. And, you do have to figure that out. You're kind of kicking the can down the road a little bit because, like, you do want Levi to be the guy of the future. And are you stunting his growth? Perhaps it's possible, you can play him in the AHL for a little bit too. And, have UPL hopefully be your backup as well. At least for this season. There are different ways, I guess, you can approach it. Is it like does it make the perfect sense? Not necessarily, but they're in a weird spot where, like, the team is ready to compete right now, Buffalo, and I think they'll feel that they are ready to compete right now, but in net, they are not. And so, is Hellebuyck more of like a long-term answer? But yeah, potentially he is, where like you're not going to maybe bring him in for a year or two, but like you can at the same time. And I know if they want to contend right now, like, why not? Like, reward those young guys, like give them a chance, like they've earned their shot to go for it. And like, this is like kind of the move you make as a GM where you're like, hey, like, I believe in you guys and I'm going to give you guys everything you need right now to go out there. And, in a Eastern Conference that is like going to be a lot more open this year than it was last year. Right. I mean, Things are really starting to open up. A lot of those top end teams are kind of on the decline. So like, yeah, I'm rewarding those young guys and I'm like giving them Hellebuyck and giving them a chance to really take a run at this.
All right, fair enough. We'll submit the trade through then. Now, on the list that you had sent me over earlier of potential moves, there was a couple more trades that you had been looking at.
Yeah.
What are those? Who else are you trying to bring into this Jets team? Because seems by at least the model you're building out here for the Winnipeg Jets next year, Cheveldayoff is going to have a pretty active fall in this offseason.
Yeah. So I'm also looking to ship out Brendan Dillon here. And I think will make a little bit more sense in a bit. But I think Brendan Dillon, I mean, obviously with bringing in Dursey, you have a bit of a logjam on that left side. And Dillon's a guy who you can get something for now. You know, he's only got 1 year left. Might as well get something while you still can. You're not going to get a ton. In the Habs one, I think we did the exact same thing here. We traded Joel Edmondson to Seattle. Well, now we're trading Brendan Dillon to Seattle instead for a third round pick. I think Seattle's definitely a team that's going to be in the market for a defenseman this summer. They have the cap space, they have the assets, and I think if you look at the kind of way their depth charts mapped out, they're definitely going to be in the market for some blue line help.
Okay, effectively opening up some cap space, and on top of that, opening up roster spots along your left side, as we looked at earlier there in terms of the depth. We were jammed up on the left side of the defense. Now, where's the next move that we go from here?
Okay, so now if we scroll down to defense there, looks like there's a little bit of a need on the right side. And so obviously, you know, you can turn to free agency to fill that. But being the Jets, we've already talked about it, you know, you kind of struggle to attract free agents. It's no sure thing you're going to get one. It's not a great defensive market this summer. So I am looking instead to a cap strap team in the Minnesota Wild. And I'm going to go after one of their restricted free agents in Kalen Addison, who hasn't gotten the most chance there yet. I think a very good player who could benefit from a change of scenery. And why not have that change of scenery be sending him to, you know, his hometown? He's a Manitoba kid. You know, he's from Brandon. Let's send him to Winnipeg. Guy under team control. I think he's a guy who will be sort of happy to go there. You know, he won't be avoiding Winnipeg. Maybe we'll be open to a long-term deal. If, you know, right now you trade for him, you can sign him to like a 2-year deal in the meantime to keep him under team control. So he's an RFA after that. But yeah, someone who, like, I think you can see factoring into the organization for a long time.
Yeah. Okay. So what are we sending the other way for Addison here?
So, I mean, I think you're probably going to have to give up like a second or third. Maybe you're going to give, let's say like you can pry him away for your third round pick. Obviously the Wild, I mean, he's not like, Addison didn't factor in heavily into their plans this season, and they're in a tough spot against the cap. So like looking to get an asset for a guy that they're going to potentially struggle to re-sign, I think that's a deal that makes sense for both sides.
All right, we'll send that trade through. And bring in Kalen Addison there, and then we'll get him signed. Now, are there any other trades that you're looking to make this offseason before we have to go and sign Anderson Dolan, make sure he gets under contract, as well as Kalen Addison, and before we move on to the free agent market?
Yeah, so you've obviously got the cap space now, right? You moved on from Wheeler, you moved on from Scheifele, Dubois gone, Hellebuyck's gone. Like, you've got a ton of cap space. I think that, you know, let's look to weaponize that a bit. And again, free agency, maybe not the best route for the Jets, where you're going to struggle to attract some guys. So let's look at another Canadian city here in Vancouver, a team that is very much up against the cap. And they have a guy in Connor Garland who has no trade clause, who's under term for a while, which is something that is very beneficial to a team like the Jets, to be able to bring in a guy who has, you know, several, I think he's got 3 years left on his contract.
Correct.
He's 27 years old, has been a very productive NHL player. I think if you're the Jets, you're going to have to really overpay in free agency to try and bring someone in of his caliber. So in order to, you know, to get someone like that, who basically you can, I think, get for free at this point, the reports are that teams are calling and asking for an asset to take Garland. I mean, if you're the Jets and you can go in there and be like, hey, you know, we'll give a late round pick and take Garland off your hands, I think the Canucks are going to do that in a heartbeat. Frees up some space for them and gives them a bit more wiggle rooms. And then for the Jets, you're getting a guy who's going to contribute right now and who is, you know, maybe going to benefit again from a change of scenery.
Right. So that pick going back the other way that you're likely looking at here, where would that be? What kind of value do you put on that for Connor Garland to be able to get him out of Vancouver?
I think you're basically going to look at like future considerations type of thing here. Yeah, maybe like a 6 for next year that could escalate as high as like a 4th, depending on like, you know, how he does or whatever. But let's say like a 6th-round pick next season.
All right, so go 2024 6th-round pick for next season, with the kind of the stipulations that you're going to throw in some considerations on this. Hey, how do the Jets do? How does he perform with the new team? That kind of thing, and especially considering some of the other factors that we're hearing about now in terms of what it might take to get Garland out of Vancouver, and Vancouver maybe just looking to move on from him. Just take that into consideration with these trades. So, is that it? Are you done making trades now this offseason? Like, that's it? There's no more trades? Okay. Let's first go and get some of these guys signed. Let's get our RFAs that we've just brought in under contract. Okay, first and foremost, Anderson Dolan. What do you kind of anticipate that he might be looking for in his next contract here with the Winnipeg Jets?
2 years, $850 or so K per season.
Okay. And next, the local boy, Kalen Addison. Where are we looking at there?
Let's go 2 years. We keep him under team control after that. For about 1.65.
All right. Our own RFAs are done. Our trades are made. We signed the RFAs that we've traded for. Is there any other moves that you're looking for this offseason? Free agency, are you looking in there, and who do you try to acquire?
Yeah, so let's shape up our roster a little bit here and see where the gaps are and see where we're going to dip our toe into the free agent pool.
Right.
So I think part of the deals that the part of the thing with the Scheifele deal, the Dubois deal, is you're freeing up spaces down the middle where you're going to want Netjes to hopefully be that guy who can take on a center role. And I think the same thing with Cole Perfetti. I think you're going to give him a chance to play center legitimately next season. So let's put Netjes as that 1C, and let's get Cole Perfetti in there. I think he might be on IR. So we'll go Perfetti as the 2C, Lowry as the 3C, and then Anderson Dolan will be the 5C. I think Stenlund can go down to the minors.
Okay.
And then on that left side, let's go Connor, and then maybe Iafallo up to that second line. Need a rider on that third line with Lowry, and then Gustafsson can go down to the minors as well. On the right side, we'll go Ehlers line 1, and then Garland line 2, Olofsson line 3. I think those guys are a bit interchangeable. We'll leave that up to coach. And then Appleton line 4. That makes sense. We'll get Peterka up to left wing line 4 there. So we need a 4C. We need 2 goalies, and we're good on the back end for now. I think we got Logan Stanley there as well. Okay, so we need a 4C. I think if I'm the Jets, I'm looking at a guy like Lars Eller or Thomas Nosek. 2 guys who are, defensively sound. I think at this point their careers are pretty much just cemented as fourth line centers. Let's go with Thomas Nosek.
Okay. And what do you bring him in at? What term? How many years?
Let's say like 2 years, 1.25. You're probably gonna have to overpay a little bit for these guys just to get them to come to Winnipeg.
Correct.
Yeah, maybe even up like a 1.5. But I think that Nosek's someone who's probably gonna make like $1 million, and for the Jets, you're probably gonna have to up that a little bit. So let's get Nosek in there, and then let's look to goaltender now, where we're going to have to fill the void with Hellebuyck leaving in a trade and Riddick leaving as a free agent. So I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to bring in a guy like Korpisalo. And he's a guy who I think obviously you're going to have to overpay for. just considering the state of the goaltender market.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's coming off a pretty good season. I think he's a guy who is a fair gamble to take. I think I'm willing to take a bit of a swing on him. And so let's go like 4x4 for Korpisalo, which is probably a lot more than people are expecting for him to get. But like, if you're going to want to lure him into Winnipeg, and, you know, he's a guy who could potentially be that number one for you.
All right. Lock him in there. Okay, so we still need another goalie here for the Winnipeg Jets. Who is the backup to Korpisalo next year?
Let's bring back the old faithful, Laurent Brossoit, a guy who obviously has played at Winnipeg before, Cup winner, impressed in his, you know, playoff run with the Knights before getting injured. Let's bring him back, maybe like a 2x2, something like that. I think that's a good deal for him.
All right. Currently looking at $4 million in cap space for next season. You got 24 guys on your roster as it is right now, 14 forwards there, and defense is filled out. Any other moves for you this offseason? No more trades, signings, that's it? You're done?
I think Chevy racked up quite a phone bill, and I think this is where he's got to draw the line here.
Okay, so to recap the moves here, because there were a lot, I want to make sure people kind of see these as they've gone in. So let's go through some of the trades that were made. So you're moving on from Pierre-Luc Dubois. You bring back Anderson Dolan, Sean Durzi, and Iafallo from the Winnipeg from the LA Kings. You go to Carolina, you hit them up, and you tell them you're going to send them Mark Scheifele. You bring him back Martin Necas as well as a 4th-round pick. Then your next move, you got to move on from the goaltender who doesn't want to re-up. Hellebuyck on his way to the Buffalo Sabres, but you get back Olofsson and Peterka as well as a 2nd-round pick there. Then now you're trying to open up some space, looking at moving on from guys on the defensive side. Brendan Dillon, get some value back, get a 3rd-round pick from the Seattle Kraken. Now, okay, looking at moving on from some defense there, bring in some new guys, fresh faces, guys from around the Winnipeg area, Kalen Addison for a 3rd-round pick, and then you go to the Vancouver Canucks. Your final trade, you're acquiring Connor Garland for a 6th-round pick. Then going through some of the free agent signings, you're just bringing back some of your guys as well as signing some of the players that you've acquired the rights to. Morgan Barron, Kevin Stenlin, Logan Stanley, Anderson Dolan, and Kalen Addison all get locked under contract. And then finally, you go to the free agent market. Nosek, Korpisalo, and Brossoit, guys that you bring in as you've kind of essentially cleared out all the goaltenders that you had in Winnipeg, so you need to replenish that. There's your moves for this offseason. Finishes off at $4 million in cap space. Now, before we go into this next year, what is it that is your goal as Kevin Cheveldayoff and the Winnipeg Jets? What do you want to achieve next season?
I want to be right back in the playoffs. I want to be competing again. I want to, top 2 or 3 in that division. And I don't think you look at that roster, like top to bottom. I mean, maybe you lose a little bit of your star power, but you've got a much deeper team. Like, this feels very Kraken-esque here. And, a Korpisalo and a Grubauer kind of thing, like interchangeable a little bit in goal. You got obviously a bit more star power, though, like with Kyle Connor and Nikolai Ehlers, but you're able to also then roll 4 lines with guys like Niederreiter and Olofsson, Appleton, Peterka providing scoring from the bottom 6. Like, obviously a lot hinges on whether Necas and Perfetti are able to carry the load at center and, to actually make that transition full time. But if those guys are able to sort of transition in there and fill those voids, then I think you're looking at a team that is very much going to be in contention to obviously, a playoff team, and, beyond that, who knows?
All right, well, there you go. There's our second offseason plan, another Canadian market knockdown, the Winnipeg Jets. If you agree with anything we said, disagree with anything we said, make sure to let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the content here today, please make sure to like this video, subscribe here to the Edgework HQ YouTube channel. More of these coming up leading up to free agency, so we'll try our best to predict or figure out what we think each of these teams needs the most and the course of action that they'll take leading up to those. If you enjoyed the content, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Much more of this coming. We'll see you guys soon.